Welcome everyone to Elemental Awakening podcast. I have an amazing guest today. His name is Salvatore Gencarelle from southern Italy. No, he's from actually North America with a very Italian name. Very amazing guy that I've learned a lot from. I'm gonna let him introduce himself a bit more in a second. So first off, just say thanks, Sal, for spending the time and taking the time to do the show with me, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, Gio, it's great to see you again. And of course, we've done this before in the past, so it's really awesome just to sit here and kind of have these jam sessions and interviews with you again.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So, if someone were to ask, like, what do you call yourself? You're a teacher. I don't even know sometimes. Like Sal, he's this elder. He's a teacher. What would you say if someone asked you, like, how would you define yourself if you had to put words to it?
Yeah, this is so funny because just before I got on the call with you, I was talking to somebody exactly about this because it's not easy in this day and age, because when you say certain things, you get put in a box and you're like, I don't want to be in that box. That's not the box I'm in. It's not the work I do. And the terminology that we were speaking of, I think the most appropriate way to say it right now is that we guide people to find their highest purpose. One of the ways we speak about this are that we're visionary healers. And maybe if I can explain that just really briefly is, like people have different healing modalities, and if you think of the modern doctor, for example, somebody that's a medical doctor, they're going to treat your body. They're going to treat kind of you as a flesh mechanic, right? They're going to work on the components of your body. They're going to try to heal you physically. If you go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, they're going to work on your psychological states, your mental states, your emotional states, and they're going to find well-being in that way. What we do is we work on what could be called vision and purpose. What is your vision? What is your purpose in this world? What are you here to do? And how can we help you to fulfill that? How can we help you to find that, and then like really fill yourself out into that, to be who you truly are desiring to be at the deepest level. So I think a guide to finding purpose would be one way to say it. And I think another way to say it that we oftentimes use is we're visionary healers. We heal that part of you that maybe you could call spirit or spiritual, but it's that part of you that has that deep longing and that deep seeking for depth and meaning in life. And we help you find that in a very holistic way with some very ancient tools and practices. So
Okay,
that's
yeah.
it in a nutshell.
All right. Fit that all in a business card. Good thing there's no more such thing as business cards anymore. So visionary healer, I like it. Okay, so tell me some of the types of people. Do you work with, like, high-level executive leaders, people who are more into nature and into the native traditions, or everyday Joes? What are the type of people you find that are coming to you, or that you find yourself crossing paths with? I guess probably the best way.
Yeah, it really runs the whole spectrum. Everything from soccer moms to the high level CEO, the CEO that's retired, that's looking for more in life. People that are nature connected, that live out of their cars and do flint napping and tan hides. Like, it's something that I think, as I've looked at this over the years, that everybody wants purpose. Everybody wants to really fulfill who they are in the highest sense of that word. And so it attracts many different people. I would say, though, with that, the demographic is oftentimes people that have kind of crossed that threshold of adolescence, so young adults into older adults. And I tend to find that the older adults are really passionate about this in a kind of powerful way. They really embrace it in a way that even younger adults aren't necessarily ready for. So, if I can narrow it down to any kind of demographic, it's that adult phase of, I really want to do what I'm supposed to do in this world. I feel this calling and I don't know what it is.
And I think that right there is probably the most common thing I hear with most people is, I don't like what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't have any purpose. And I've been there myself. And my journey took me to a lot of interesting and strange places, challenges, ups and downs. And I still am figuring it out. You know what I mean? I'm very aligned now. That feels good, but it's still a constant journey. So like, take me through a little bit of your process of like what that would look like for someone that comes in is like, Sal, I'm lost. Help me find my way. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do? Like, what? Take me through some. I know don't you have to give me the whole thing, but what are the first few things that you would work on with someone? Just I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a process that has been refined over about 30 years of course learning this along the way with all my different teachers, but then especially in the last 8 years or so of really teaching this worldwide. It's like I've kind of did a lot of R&D to figure out, okay, what do people really need? We can jump you all the way up into like doing something like a vision quest, go from 0 to, it's not even 60, it's like 160.
100,000.
And that can have right, that can have great impact, but what that can also do is it's so extreme, it's such an extreme change and extreme shift that what ends up happening is it doesn't integrate very well, especially when you try to take that back into the world that you're coming from.
So for those of us
So
that don't
one
know
of
what
the
a
things
vision
that
quest, sorry, for those of us that don't know what a vision quest is, just quickly explain the process of a vision quest.
Yeah, Vision Quest is a time, a duration in nature, in isolation, oftentimes involving fasting of different sorts, from water, from food. It's this time of seclusion and deep reflection in nature. And there's different forms of this, but the gist of it is like you go and you really look at yourself, you really think about where you're at in life, and you ask these profound questions, and you're given that time to reflect, which maybe it's sounds simpler than it is, and it really is, as having done this before, it can really change a person's life, even if it's for a short duration.
And do you think these answers come from within or from without? It's something's being imparted to them. I know this is a very existential question of,
Yeah,
both
I
maybe. I
I
don't
think you know yeah, and that would be my answer, because when you really enter into this deeply connected state where, let's say, it's a form of unity consciousness. I think there's many forms of unity consciousness, but it's a form of your consciousness recognizing itself within recognizing the creation. So people have those moments, like really blips or brief glimpses when they maybe look up at the stars, and it's kind of like they recognize that they're connected to some inner self, and there's a certain state that goes with that. Most people can relate to that, or they see a vast landscape, on the mountaintop, and they're just like, witnessing themselves, witnessing creation, and creation witnessing itself through them. So this is like the kind of unity consciousness I'm talking about. And in that moment, in those kind of moments when we're like that, it's like, is it inner or is it outer? A lot of times I think it is simultaneous. It is the creation speaking through you, but you are the creation. So it may sometimes feel like it's coming from the inside, like as a thought process or a feeling process or something kind of like percolating and rising up in us. Or it could be like something's coming from the outside and like pouring into you. Maybe some people call that the download.
Mm.
But I think those moments of whether it's rising up in you or coming from outside of you, it's coming from like a source that is in unity. The universe. Maybe some people would call that God. Some people the creator, but it's coming from a source of connectedness that is quite profound. So the Vision Quest creates a container that allows those types of connection moments to take place.
Awesome. And so like people that come this path, like let's say someone who's in business or an entrepreneur, do I think some people be afraid, oh, I'm afraid to do that because I'm going to walk away from my life and I'm going to become like a hippie or become like a nature enthusiast and lose everything.
Yeah.
Is that usually the case, or do people come
Yeah.
back sometimes more inspired to do better at what they're currently doing?
Yeah. So that's a common fear, and I think that there's a lot of different fears that come up when people, really start seeking like vision and purpose in this really profound way, and through these tools and methodologies. Um, so what we do is we essentially get a person ready, and that's in your question about like how do we meet that. We don't necessarily throw them up on the vision quest the first day we meet them. What we do now is we get them ready, and what the process that we're using right now is we do a lot of online education. So from wherever you're at in the world, we can teach you about like how do you get into alignment, how do you kind of the parts of yourself and the way you think about things, the way you feel about things. What is your spiritual relationship? How are you connected to the world? How are you connected to the ancestors, the future generations? Do you have hope? Do you have fears? So we look at all of that, and we guide people through that process of looking at all that. And really the ultimate goal is to get them into a place of connection with themselves and alignment towards their goal of finding purpose. So it in essence gets them ready to really go into that deeply reflective state where the consciousness of the universe can speak through them and to them, and they know why they're doing it, and they also remember in the why they're doing it, the things that they love. So this answers the question where, let's say you have somebody that has, a business life, they're managing a company, they have a family, they have all these commitments, and their fear is, well, I'm going to go up on this vision quest, and then next thing you know, I'm going to turn my back on all my family because my vision is now to do this, and I can't do that. I can't risk that. I don't want to do the vision quest. That's not how it works, and this is what we teach. We say, okay, what you're doing this for, who you're doing this for, really what you love in this world, who you love in this world is why you're doing this. You're going to go there and you're going to forego, the food, and you're going to forego the sleep and the comfort, and you're going to sit in nature and you're going to reflect on this because you love your children that much, because you love your life and the people that you affect in your business that much. And that's going to help you, having that alignment. You're going to get help and you're going to get guidance. And then the next thing we do is when they come back from that is we help them integrate that. We want to make sure that whatever the experiences are, that they actually bring that into their lives in a really good and positive ways. Because sometimes, things can come up like, wow, you know what? I really found, for example, I'm having a lot of problems with my wife. This is what somebody might say. And, I have to make some decisions on that. Do I leave her or, I'm having problems with my job, and do I leave my job? And then in the visionary experience, they get some information, and then they have to come back and they have to process that. So we help them integrate that, and we help guide them. And our guidance is to make sure that whatever's integrated and however they then go out from that experience, that they do it in the most positive and connected way possible. Vision, if you will, guidance, if you will, should never lead to woundedness and disconnect. It really shouldn't. That's not its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So if a person takes it that way and they take it and then they take it and they like abandon their family because now they have this quote unquote vision and purpose, and their family doesn't matter. That's not how it works. Not in a healthy and holistic way.
Yeah, I see a
So
lot
we
of
help with that.
yeah. So it's very interesting because I see a lot of similarities between the work you do and like plant medicine work. But the visionary experience you're talking about is no exogenous substances. They're all
No.
this is just all working with your own energies, fasting, altered states through maybe a sweat lodge or something like that, or just putting yourself out there.
Yep.
Totally right. So
Yep.
the visions are
Yep.
coming from just sitting with yourself and being open to that, like you call cosmic or divine consciousness. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yep. And
And then go ahead.
there. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and as you know, like there's a whole ceremonial process in getting somebody ready for that state. Like it's not that, you go from like, oh, I'm drinking a soda and you know, like watching TV to like, okay, I should vision quest, and you
It's a
walk out the
sparkling
door and you
water.
go into,
It's not a
you know, the
soda.
woods.
It's sparkling water. Yeah, but I hear you.
I never
Yeah.
doubted you.
Sugar free, sugar free.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And like the next thing too that I see is one of the biggest sort of I guess areas of lack with the whole plant medicine community or subculture that's evolved is that lack of proper integration, because it's illegal, because most people travel far away, they come back and they don't have anyone to talk to or any way to really integrate those experiences. And so like in your experience, how important is the actual experience versus the integration? Is it like 50-50? Is the integration just weight just as much? Like what would you say?
Yeah, it's a great, that's a great question. I actually think the integration, you know, I've never had that question posed to me, by the way, but I think that that question and the answer to that question is that the integration, I would put it at like 80%, where the experience is 20%.
And I had
And
yeah.
I say that there's two, well, there's two big experiences, you know, and I've done this many years, and I've seen many people not have that integration. I've had people come to me years after they vision quest, not with me but with other people, and explain just the most incredible experiences and describe what it was like, that when they got home they didn't know what to do with it, and then they just continued with their life. And that, you know, now these elders or these older people that had these powerful visions, that never integrated that and never allowed that transformation in the work to work through them, you know, just were mourning, if you will. They were in grief because they expressed, I've dropped the ball. I didn't do what I was supposed to. You know, I was supposed to do this thing and I didn't do it because I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So there's that side of it, but there's also this side of it where people will integrate it in a wrong way, if you will. You know, like the example I was sharing, where they'll feel like, okay, now I'm supposed to take this vision and I'm supposed to abandon my family and all the things I love and like become the monk on the hill, and, you know, or wander the woods and help people that I find along the way. And it's super dysfunctional. So 80% of it is integration, because you can have the most powerful experiences in the world and just go off the rails.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And you know, even when I'm teaching breath work and stuff like that, like a perfect example is last night. You know, one woman who has been coming to class for a couple months now, and she's been making progress, like every time something different experience, different realization, you know, little things. And then last night she goes into a full-on panic attack, and she has to leave the room after we're doing a sharing circle, and she just can't snap out of it. And you know, I go out and I talk to her, ask her what's going on in her life right now, try to really, you know, try to help her get some clarity, just talking her through like what it could be. And you know, we get her calm, we get her to come back in the room. She tells me she goes home and she has another panic attack. And this is the next morning. She messaged me. I tell everyone, you know, if you need to talk, please like reach out to me the following day. I want to be accessible. And you know, I asked her, what was your intention going into class last night? She says it was to connect with my inner child, and I was expecting to play and have all this fun. And I go, really? And like, when you experience the panic attacks, did anything come up? She goes, you know what? When I was at home, I had a vision of me hiding in a closet as a little kid. I said, okay.
Mm.
And I said, okay, do you think that that little child was feeling that panic and that sort of anxiety that you were feeling now? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So maybe there's some healing that needs to be done from those memories, that subconscious mind from that past, that long ago that you've suppressed so low that this, you know, peeling these layers of breathworks, bringing you down to that really old memory that still hasn't been healed, that you've sort of pushed so far away. And when she had that realization, it was like she had this big weight lifted off her shoulders. Okay, that's where you got to start focusing the work on, is letting that little girl know that she's safe now, that she's okay, it wasn't her fault, she's, you know, innocent, and all the things that were going on in her house that time that caused her to hide in the closet, they're not there anymore, you know, and to really go back and connect with that. But if I never spoke to her, you know, her first message was, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I like something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That was the first
Yeah.
response. And I would have
Yeah.
probably felt the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm regressing. I'm like, wait, no, let's not go there. Yeah, let's talk about it first, you know? So yeah, I totally relate to that. And I 100% agree with how important integration is. And I think just now we're starting to build better integration methods and models based on experience. which I think we've lost over the years,
Yeah.
because there used to be much stronger knit communities where they would have elders that would, help, and people would be able to talk about these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, none of these kind of processes were ever done in just for themselves, if you will. Especially the tools and techniques I work with, like a vision quest, for example. Again, it was always in coordination with the tribe, with the village, with the group. So you had all these different mentors preparing you. You had your personal experience, but then you had this whole village integrating your experience back into the village as well. So you weren't just like abandoned, if you will, or you weren't just said, okay, now, yeah, go about your life and nobody can hold you in this. Good questions, good mentors, it's critical, and ideally it's part of the healing work that we do is how do we rebuild the village? How do we not just heal the individual, but how do we heal the collective? And we approach it from both directions. We kind of provide the village, even if it's like what you're describing, just one person being there to catch that story, to hear it, to help them to process it, and then to integrate it in a positive way. That if that's all you have, that's so much more than what most people have right now. Just one person even. So I get it, and I really appreciate that, and great work, man. Like, for
No,
sure,
thanks,
I just
brother. Thanks.
applaud that.
I've had a lot of great
Yeah.
teachers and mentors around me that I've really tried to pay attention when I'm like, even though the couple of times we spent with you, always just watching and trying to listen and learn and see how, things are led by example and shown with humility, but then also asking the right questions as well to help, guide people and find those answers. So I know most people are probably wondering how a good old Italian boy found himself in this line of work from I guess Northeast U.S. Boston's where you're originally from, right?
Yeah, Western
Western
Massachusetts.
Mass. Okay. And how did you
Yeah,
find yourself in this
yeah,
line of work, with doing all these native traditional ceremonies and line of work?
yeah, yeah. I had this experience. It could be called a vision. It could be called the awakening moment. Um, when I was about 15, in kind of in that early stage of puberty, really, um, I I recognized that this world is moving in a direction that wasn't going to be positive, wasn't going to be healthy, it wasn't life sustaining, and that was now over 30 years ago, and obviously, like, um, the vision of the world that I saw is in different ways coming about. Thank God, not totally, and hopefully never in the way that I saw. But the vision was pretty much like people need to heal, people need to change their relationship to the world, and it was like the big download. It was like all of this information and understanding was just filling me up,
Yeah.
and
So
literally, like, it felt like it was pouring in.
yeah. So like, yeah,
So
elemental awakening is about, also like that waking up moment. So did something happen that sparked that, or was it just like you're just sitting there one day, you're like, oh my God, or did it come from fear, like fear of the world crumbling, or?
no, it really, I wasn't searching for anything at that time in that way. I think there was, I've always had like kind of deep curiosity about the world, about how life works. It's just something that I've always kind of like been drawn towards. Actually, I at the time I really loved art, and I was drawing a lot. And my idea was to like a classic artist or something. And my parents, they did raise me really close to nature. They were kind of the classic 60s hippies, but they didn't go down like the let's say the plant medicine path or the drug abuse path that many of their friends did. They were like kind of like pure nature, wood stoves and gardening and eating off the land. So that was my upbringing, and I had always had a deep love for nature. And what ended up taking place is, I essentially was exposed to some Native American concepts. And funny enough, it was through the TV. And it was kind of just at this moment where it clicked, and I've seen things like this my whole life. I've seen I've seen Native American imagery and Native American stories. I spent much of my life in a teepee that my parents owned, but it was just kind of life. And
You
then
think past
when I
life you might have
witnessed that in
been?
a certain way, it clicked.
You think past life you might have
You
been
know,
something like to be that strong in your awareness? Do you think it
yeah,
came from a past life? Maybe? Do
yeah.
you believe in that kind of stuff?
I do believe in that kind of stuff, and actually, that's part of the lineage and teachings that my teacher actually later, you know, once I went through this whole learning journey, that he explained is a valid thing. This is a true thing, and I yes in the way too, as well as that, especially after this kind of download awakening experience. Like I knew things that I had no context for. And I knew things about nature. I knew things about spirituality, spiritual law, if you will. I knew things about ceremony and ceremonial practices and even ceremonial items. And I've never been exposed to that directly before. You know, there was no native teacher there was no tribe I was raised in, but all of a sudden I knew I had to do certain things. So I followed that like instinct, and I started to work with these sacred tools. I went out and I, you know, got this stone and I made this pipe, you know, some people would call it a peace pipe, like, and I didn't know what this was, but I knew I had to do this, and that's all I did, you know. So I kept following this instinct, and I spent a lot of time in nature. And after about 6-7 months, almost a year of this, I recognized that I needed a human teacher. And so in this kind of prayerful state, you know, going out into nature, sitting up on top of a mountain that I live nearby and looking, you know, across the land, and in that space of real deep connectedness, I sent that kind of that voice out, you know, and through my words, through my heart, through my mind, and I said, I need a teacher. I need a human being that can tell me if this is valid, right? Because I'm just running off instinct right now. I'm feeling those pulls and I'm just doing what I feel is what I need to do, but I need someone to confirm this. And literally within a few months, there's a Native American healer, a renowned Native American medicine man, if you will, coming from South Dakota, and he ends up at the place that I'm working at. I'm learning a bit about herbs, and I'm doing some gardening work with this herbalist, and this Native American man shows up at my work, you know, to do these purification ceremonies. And I'm not assuming that this is my teacher, you know, there's hopefulness there. But once I see what he does and what he has to offer, I recognize and I commit myself and I say, this must be the person, because I've never seen anything like this. I've never heard of anything like this. This is a miracle, and I need to know what just happened and how this works. So
Can you
I,
share more
after
about
that,
that?
went basically into a 17-year apprentice. Well, the
Like, was it
first part of
so the
meeting him was
question was,
essentially just,
yeah, the question was the knowing part. Was that something you just know, or did you experience something and witness with your own
mhm.
eyes and then was convinced, or was it just an intuitive
Yeah,
knowing?
no, it was definitely an experience. The first part of the experience was the purification, what most people call the sweat lodge, right? In that tradition, in this lineage, they call it the inipi. It translates to life within. So it's a purification, right? It's a purification ceremony. And he basically offered a number of these purification ceremonies, and they were really, really profound, you know, and I would say even that alone would have been life-changing, in like confirming my instinct and my intuitions that were happening and everything else. But then he did a ceremony, and he kind of did the ceremony that he was actually there for. And that was a healing ceremony for this woman who had multiple sclerosis. And she had kind of late stage, I would say, multiple sclerosis, MS. Her body was shutting down. She wasn't able to move. Her muscle loss was happening, the whole thing. And he did a ceremony for her. And in that ceremony, it's what they call a dark room ceremony. And in the language, the Lakota language, it's called a Yuwipi. She was brought in by her friends and her supporters, and four adult men had to carry her in, one on each limb, and they brought her in. They put her on a mattress in this room, and the ceremonial altar was set up. The lights go out. It's completely dark in this room. There's songs that are being sung, and there's rattling, and there's a whistle blowing. And this goes on for probably about 20 minutes. Like really, I can't really tell how long it goes on for. It's timeless, it's spaceless. The room is gone, everything's gone. It's like you're in the universe. Like literally, you're like in the universe. You look up, you see stars, right? And we come back, the lights get turned on, and what ends up happening is this woman who, I witnessed being sick for a number of days over the time that we were together, and then carried into this room. She stands up, and it's not just a stand, it's more of she jumps up from that bed that she was sitting on now, and she walks over and she gives this medicine man a hug. And everybody in that room, including myself, which at that time I was 16, we all gasped, and there were yogis in this room. There were people that had done meditation and teachings with East Indian traditions for 40 years, and everybody gasped. And everybody in that room, said essentially afterwards, what just happened? We've never seen anything like this. We've never heard of anything like this. We witnessed what at the time we would have all considered an absolute verifiable miracle. And that's when I knew, when I saw that, I said, this must be my teacher. This is it. And in that time, in my heart, not verbally, I committed. I said, I'm going to learn what this is about and how this just happened. And that was it.
And here we are,
so
30 years later.
Right. Yeah. And a lot's happened between now and then. Like that was the first of many, many, many miracles, to the degree where I don't even consider a miracle. I consider, it a spiritual science, that these things that people call miracles, there are processes to actually invoke this, to make it happen, to generate, transformation and healing on incredibly profound levels. And it really, for me, it answered the prayer that I originally started with, because I asked, how can we heal as human beings our relationship to the earth so that we can have a healthy and happy future? Like, how can that level of transformation take place? Because, like the odds are stacked against us, the society and the capitalism and all the things that we know that are kind of eating away at the earth and at the way of society and at the way of families and even our kind of souls. That's stacked against us. So how do we transform that? And what I saw in that moment, and what I learned about through the years of training and experience, was transformation and healing is available to the human beings that most people can only imagine. Like, it is a possible thing, and we just need to interact with that. We need to work with it. We need to learn how to do it, and we can make massive changes. And that's what, the teachings that I bring in through Helpers Mentoring Society and this organization I work with and I formed is all about. How do we make change to that degree and heal humanity?
Oh, wow.
So,
amazing. Yeah, I've experienced some of it firsthand.
It's a journey.
Yeah, amazing journey. And so now you facilitate ceremonies, or you lead ceremonies, or you're a guide, and you also train and initiate people as well that feel called to be on this journey as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So like the work that we do, this visionary healing work, this visionary guiding work, it is truly about that. And we use the tools and technologies. And to me, like, I consider things like the drum and the songs that were sung in those ceremonies, these are technologies that are really ancient and powerful, transformative. So we use these tools and technologies to create the opportunity for people to connect, to create the opportunity for people to experience profound sacredness, if you will, profound connection, and find themselves really with that, find a relationship to that and let that inform them. Now, some people will find that, and they'll be like, okay, I am dedicated to being the greatest mother, the greatest father I can be. Or some people are called to, you know, become herbalists. Some people are called to, you know, change the systems that they're working in so that people are healthier and happier. Some people are called to become healers and to work with these tools and techniques. And so we address all of that, you know, and I'm really excited. I'm always really passionate about people that want to learn these tools and techniques, that are really dedicated to that, that are willing to commit that relationship. I'm very willing to help teach them. You know, there's a lot to it. You know, there's years and years and years of training, but we need more healers in this world. You know, and I truly believe that there are many people that are called to be healers, that especially in the let's say the Western world or the modern world, that are called to be healers, but there's nowhere for that true calling to land, and so they find other things to do. And one of the things I'd like to do is meet that true calling the way I was met. You know, that somebody took me under their wings and said, I'll teach you how this works. You know,
Yeah.
and when I find somebody like that, I'm like, all right, you know, we're gonna teach you.
I wish you lived closer to Toronto, because you know when you guys were here for that week, it was such a treat. And then I found that it was hard to keep that sort of small community together. Like, you know, our friend Stu moved out west, and you know, we got Dr. Bill here, who's not that close to Toronto, and um, you know, so finding these communities, and there are out there, and I guess I just maybe have to look a little bit harder. But just to create that base, I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of value in there for people. Like I felt it so strongly in just the few short time that we spent together and that I spent with Stu. So there definitely is a lot there for a lot of people that I think what you do is help people find connection. I think most people in the West are lacking connection, you know, like, plain and simple. You know, technology is a great tool for many things, but it also has a lot of downfalls when it comes to connection with people, with the earth, with nature. Yeah, I think it's really important what you're doing, and I think people need to have access. Which is a question, you know, like your kids are involved in this journey as well, and you know, the thing that I like about this is that I think it's something that's very inclusive of the family unit, right? That teachings from a young age about how things work and how nature works. And I feel a lot of kids, including my own, have lost that connection as well. I think that's really where it starts, right? If you don't have connection
yeah,
when you're a child, how are you supposed to understand connection when you're an adult? And all these things are, these feelings are getting stronger. This disconnection is, the alarm bells are going off. Like, I'm lost. I have no
yep,
purpose, right? And
yep.
you find a lot
Yeah,
of people bringing their families in for these type of connection weekends, stuff like that.
yeah, absolutely. Like I encourage that, and exactly for all those reasons that you know, like children are born to connect. We are all born to connect. You know, like we are designed, if you will, for connection. You know, this is why connection feels so good. You know, like when we make a good friendship, or you know, we have a child, or you know, like we have a dear grandmother, or we love a piece of land. Like we're designed for this. It really feels great. And children come in ready. You know, the trick with kids is to just support that connection and not to cut it, you know,
Mm.
not to break it, not to damage it, and to keep encouraging it, kind of like tease that connection further and further out. And there's great techniques for that. With adults that have gone through kind of the typical modern experience, oftentimes there's a lot of healing that's involved, kind of like your share with the woman, that she wanted to connect to that joyful, playful child, but what she uncovered was obviously there was some trauma there was some pain there, and and she needs some healing. And you know, I know you're working with her on that through that breath work and through the techniques that you have, that she finds healing for that little child that's in that closet, that's scared, you know, that was traumatized. And really, that's how it works. So we encourage the parents to
So,
come and
so
heal. We
what would
encourage
be,
the
yeah, what
children
would
to
be
come
some
and
tips
connect.
for some parents and how they can help? Like, you know, like what are some techniques that a parent can use that you can share to help get their kids connected? You know, something, you know, that might be easy to do.
Yeah, it's actually so easy. So if you observe as a parent, notice what the children like, notice what draws their attention. And I don't mean that like ice cream, because that's an easy one. They like sweets, they want the sweet. What I mean is, like, if you notice, like, the world over, like, what children love are animals, right? Like, stuffed animals are like this thing that we have all over the shelves and all over Disneyland or wherever it's at, and children are radiating towards that. They cuddle them, they hold them, they want to know. Now, that's kind of a, if you will, a sample or an example of really what a child is expressing is love for nature, and love for the animals. Like, they're drawn to nature, they're drawn to the outdoors, they're drawn to those puddles that they want to jump in the rain they want to play in. So that very simple thing of allowing that and supporting children to be in nature has been shown to have profound effect. Like, in Europe, I go to Europe a lot, and over to England, and they have these schools now, and maybe they have them in Canada. They don't really in the States, but they call them forest schools or forest kindergartens, where they just take the children in the young age, when they're 4 or 5 and all up through their elementary years, and they take them out into the woods. They take them to, it may be a park, it may be part of the playground, but they take them out and they just let them explore and play, like take the leaves and spill them on their heads and crawl around in the woods and, be creeped out by the bugs, but, have that wonder and that mystery in their life. And it's that simple. Like, it's truly like that. If you can do anything with your children, just allow them to explore nature and have those connection experiences. And I think that's true. We've also found for adults as well. Like, if you get a bunch of adults who never got to do that, and you just say, you know what, right now, just have fun in nature. It's awkward at first, like, they might stand around and they don't want to get their knees dirty, and they're gonna, they have to go after this. There's all these excuses, but once they get into it and they start connecting in that way, they're covered in mud, and they're just running around, and they're like, they bring out that childlike wonder that maybe when they try to do that as a kid, that adult stopped them, and this is such a common experience. You think of, you're walking down the street, maybe you're going to, like, church, for example. This is a common story in the old days. All right, we're going to Sunday best on, like, you got good clothes on and you're walking with your child, and it's a rainy day, and the child sees the puddle, and what's their instinct saying? Their instincts are saying, jump in the puddle, jump and splash, feel the water. And of course you can't do that. Like, and the parent will tell them, you can't do that, and sometimes very forcefully, to the degree where, if you watch those kind of scenarios, that child, you'll see, a look come over their face. You'll see them retract into themselves. They want to respect their parent, their authority in that way. They want to love and respect their parent. And you see them look at the puddle, and then you see them walk by it. And there's a look that goes with that if you're sensitive and you're aware of it, you'll see that happen. And you can see that happen again and again with children, especially in regards to, like, real vibrant play in nature. So I can offer that as an example, like, allow your children to play in nature, of course, in a good way, in a safe way, and, nothing destructive or dangerous, but allow them to experience what they need to experience with that. And that will go so far in their connection journey.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to change gears a bit here. So, I'm just curious, do you ever get any flack from like traditional, or I guess like natives, that you're an Italian guy teaching native traditions, or other people might judge you, or for people like myself that want to get involved or learn, you might feel that fear around being judged from others. Do you get that, and how do you deal with that or handle those kind of conversations?
Yeah. When I first started this, I did get quite a bit of it in different directions, in both from indigenous people and non-indigenous people. Like, it came from all these different directions. But my teacher was really, really clear and really, really adamant, powerfully adamant about certain kind of rules or laws, and he was dedicated to what would be called spiritual law in some circles. And what that means is that, like, the guidance of the spirit is the the biggest or the highest authority, right? And then we have kind of natural law underneath that, which is the law of nature and how nature operates and how it works. And then underneath that, we have human law, and human law is like the rules that human beings, make to regulate themselves or
With the
each other,
mind,
right?
made with the
Right?
mind, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and in human law is so off kilter right now, is that human law justifies and protects the destruction of nature and natural law. Like, that's how far off it is. It used to not be that far off, but now it is. So we have to really be clear on which law is in operation. And a lot of times what I found is that people that are really hung up on, this thing that oftentimes is called cultural appropriation, are really hung up into human law. They're not looking at reality from the spiritual perspective of what the spirit and what connection needs. They're not looking at it even from necessarily what nature needs, which is connected human beings. For the natural world to be healthy and happy, the human beings need to be balanced and connected. So it often comes from this place of woundedness where, me as this ethnicity or this creed or this quote unquote race has been hurt or wounded by another ethnicity, color, race, whatever it is, and we're now disconnected. And the things that belong to us, not to you. From the point of view of the spirit, we are all connected, and that just because you're housed in this body that is, Italian, for example, that doesn't mean that your spirit isn't connected to this medicine or this truth or this way, and that's where we get into things like reincarnation, the legitimately, like, you've been connected to this tradition or this medicine in a particular way, or the earth in a particular way, and now you're in this form to learn lessons that go with that, but that doesn't mean your connection isn't valid. What I will say about it, kind of in a more practical way, the true traditional people that I've ever heard, that I've ever worked with, that I've ever talked to, they will always say this, and what they will say about their traditions is that it's all about relationship. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you are of a certain background or of a certain, people from a different land. What matters is that you have a true connection with the tradition, with the medicine, with the teachings, and that you are committed to that. And there have been actually many non-native, quote unquote, medicine men initiated by healers, native, and this goes back as far as there has been contact between, let's say, European Americans and Native Americans. So it's not an unheard of event. But what is unhealthy is when people adopt traditions or practices without the relationship. If the example is if for example, attends a sweat lodge or two, and then they're like, well, this was really profound and powerful, so I'm going to go build a sweat lodge and I'm going to start running sweat lodges. Or it happens with other traditions as well. Like, I attended a yoga workshop, so now I'm going to start leading yoga classes. Or, I really like the acupuncture experience, so I'm going to start putting needles in somebody.
Same with
that
plant
doesn't
medicine.
work.
Yeah, same with plant medicine. Some people will do a couple ceremonies, then become a shaman, and start serving. And a lot of bad things could happen. There's a potential for harm and potential
Definitely.
for, the relationship hasn't been built, I don't think, with the medicine in a right way. And I think that, like you're saying, it goes across all these traditions, not just, the tradition that you work with. And I guess it's just, I guess there's just a lot of like ignorance and I guess stigmatization because of the climate in North America right now, especially with all of these things where we're destroying the land and the native or indigenous communities trying to stand up, and it's in the media. So, it's just so polarized right now. I think it really comes to light.
I think there's a way to be a true ally, when we unite as true ally, nature, maybe you could call it the earth, but I think it's really to life, to life and what truly supports life, not dollars and oil and, this kind of disconnection in energy, but what truly supports life. And how do we work with that, and how do we heal collectively? Because, there's no group out there that's isolated anymore to the degree where they can say, well, we're just going to heal ourselves and let the world burn. The world's going to burn for everybody. We're all in the same boat. So really, to be an ally with Native people, with Indigenous people, and to find our own indigeneity, if you will, is to find that relationship and to live that relationship. For myself, the training, and the teaching that I went through, it was 17 years nonstop. With my teacher, it went on for 28 years, but for 17 years, that's it. That's what I did. When he said jump, it was kind of like, like if you, the Mr. Miyagi Karate Kid kind of story, like, it's like, wax the car, paint the fence. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know this is what he told me to do. And I'd be just as frustrated and angry and, go through all these things. And then he would show me something, and I would understand why he's having me do these things. I'd have to move piles of rocks, like I had to move like tons of rocks. Like, it was one of the first tasks I had to do, is like take a pile of rocks and move it. It's probably 12 tons, at least 12 tons of rock, right? I don't get it. Like, my hands are bleeding, I have blisters, and my face is sunburnt, like literally like chunks of my skin are falling off because I'm so sunburnt. I'm hungry, I'm tired. And then it clicks, like, what's going on and why this is happening. And the balance that I'm bringing with this rock and working with this is actually affecting my inner world. And that opens this door up for healing because of something as simple as moving a bunch of rocks around. So that was the training that I went through. And for as much as possible, I provide those kinds of trainings, knowing what I know now, for as many people as want them, and as many people as I can touch. Move the rocks, paint the fence, wax the car.
Chop wood, carry water. That's the Buddhist sort of saying.
Yep. And pray all day and night.
Pray all day and night. Okay, a couple more questions. So is this like a work, like a passion of love, where, like, can people do this as a profession? Is there a business model around this that people can make? Like, can a Western doctor make $100,000 a year, but someone who's curing, MS in a sweat lodge, might be living in a very, very rough, setting on a reserve or something like that? So what's your sort of what's your sort of viewpoint around that from like a financial business type perspective for the whole community that you work with or work in? Does that make sense? You understand the question?
Yep. Sure. Oh yeah, totally. Like in this tradition, healing there's never a charge for healing. Healing is essentially free, but you could really say healing is by donation. And the more I look at and I experience kind of the Western model of insurance and kind of this capitalistic, like profit-driven model of health and healing, I so agree with the teachings and the tradition of healing is free. And it's free is not the right word, because it's not free. Nothing is ever technically free. When you're asking for something, there's always the understanding that there has to be exchange involved, but you can't set a price point on that. You can't say, okay, you want healing. Well, here's the bill that we're going to send, or here's what you have to pay to crawl into the ceremony. Ceremony itself, in its purest form, is a healing event. It's a reconnection. It's maybe wiping away disconnection. It's addressing, the things that block us, and then getting us into a more full state, and that's healing. That affects us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So with that side of things, there is never a charge. When it comes to teachings, when it comes to knowledge, and it comes to information, there can be exchange with that. There can be a point of like, here's what this costs. And the reason why I say that is, there's two ways to go about it. One way is you do it the old school way, the traditional way, if you will, and you live with your teacher, and you do those things like I was describing with the Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi. When your teacher says you need to move all of those stones, in the next 3 days, that's all you're doing. That's what you do. You don't say, well, I would rather go do this, or I wish I was, what I always said, like when he said jump, I said, how high, which direction? Like I did it. Like there was no question, because I trusted that relationship 150%.
Mm-hmm.
And I dedicated that. So instead of going to college, instead of getting a profession, instead of getting a job and making money in that way, I worked for this individual and I learned from that individual. And it was even to the degree where if I received anything, I would give it to him, right? Because my exchange, if you will, my goal was for the understanding and the knowledge. And I didn't want to take something besides that. I didn't want to get money or get something in that way, which sometimes people would gift me stuff. So that's the old school way. And I can tell you, there's no income involved, but there is a payment to it. I paid him for this knowledge, for this wisdom, for these teachings, and I worked my tail off. I worked harder than anyone could imagine. Anyone that's around or was around back in those days, you ever talk to them, they'll tell you Sal worked harder than 3 grown men.
And
now,
I don't.
The other
Sorry,
option.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
What the other option is that you create an exchange, and this is what I've done now, is because so few people can actually do that, or even want to do something like that. You create an exchange where you say, okay, this took me 30 years to learn, and here's the value of that, and here's what I can impart to you, and this is what the exchange of that is in a dollar value. And that's not fixed in the way of like, I still do work trade and I still try to make everything as accessible as possible. But I say, you have resources that can essentially give you this information in kind of an easier fashion and a simpler fashion over the internet through these different opportunities. But this is what needs to come back to me to support my family. And that includes my teacher's family. I support multiple families that are my teacher's children, his widow, and his whole family.
And
so
that was, I think,
the exchange isn't for me.
Yeah. So one of my questions, I guess, is that why you think there's a lack of teachers and people moving to this? Because do you think, well, 2 questions. One is it because there's really no way to sustain yourself financially if you dedicate your life to this? And do you need to sort of be fully dedicated to become a real, medicine man or a healer? Can you do it, working 40 hours a week and then doing this on the side type thing? Like, is that even possible?
Yeah. It gets back to the dual healing of individuals and cultures. So if you think about like a medicine man or a healer, a medicine woman, we're not genderifying it just as a man. It's kind of a universal term that everyone knows. But a healer within the community, let's say like a holistic healer, and the medicine person within these traditional communities, they were kind of like the therapists, the psychologists, the doctors. They held a really important role with the village, and everybody knew that, that person needed to be supported to do the work that they were there to do for the village. So people would bring them gifts of food and clothing and hides and whatever horses. They were oftentimes very wealthy people, not to say that they hoarded, but they had much pass through their hands.
An abundance.
Because they were helping many people, right? They had an abundance, and that abundance flowed, but that was within a healthy culture that understood their value. Now you take that same person, and I've witnessed this with my own eyes, you take that same person with the same capacities in the modern world, and even within tribal situations, a lot of times people don't know what their value is. They don't know how to exchange. And so you have somebody in that dilapidated hut, you know, living off of soup bones and not even having a vehicle, much less gas for a vehicle, and it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't work for them. You know, it doesn't meet their needs. It doesn't meet their family's needs. So what I see is that we don't just want to create healers, and we don't want to just create helpers, as I call them, visionary leaders even, or visionary healers. We also need to work on healing the society and the culture to understand what that means and how to support that. So in the modern day, you have to get really creative.
So maybe maybe it
you
needs
might
some
have to
sort of
have a job.
subsidization or community, you know, like with the internet now, you know, we would have to get creative to think of some solutions on how to, you know, subsidize some of these really talented healers, you know, rather than, and I know like a lot of Westerners, like they see that and they think, oh, I can get a healing for real cheap because this is a great healer, but he lives in the hut. I'll just throw him $20 and he'll be happy, right? But really, you know, if you went to the Western doctor, he'd charge you like 15 grand to give like a tenth of the service, right? And it was just a framing your perception around it, like what is acceptable, right? Based on society's, you know, like the norms. So you know, like, I don't know what the answer is. And I'm sure you've probably tried wrapping your head around creating some systems, but I think more awareness around it and you know, sharing some of these experiences of these true healings will draw some more attention to it, and hopefully, you know, I'm not saying Westernize it, but create an infrastructure that can support this to grow schools maybe, and pretty much what you're doing, I think, you know. And before we tell everyone what you're doing and how to get a hold of you, so do you have something you want to add there?
Yeah, you know, just that's been my approach, and I've done this, you know, for years with my teacher, and then also now independently, is teach. You know, like teach. There's a thirst and a hunger for knowledge, but not just, you know, like head knowledge that fills up your mind and kind of make sure that you get your curiosity satiated, but that deep longing. And I teach, you know, and I teach around that. And that there can be exchange for, and I've exchanged for that, you know, and had income from those types of teachings, and everything from writing books now and doing online courses and going around and doing presentations, but, you know, also getting that exchange and helping more people, you know. So if I limit that, and I take that and I say, well, it's all free, then what it makes impossible is things like this, because I don't have computers and I don't have electricity, and I don't, you know, less and less people get reached. And I think that is a huge disservice to what the world and humanity needs right now. We need to be affecting the changes that need to be affected in whatever way we're able to, and that's part of it. You know, having abundance to affect change is part of the change that is needed. Awesome. So that's all I want to add.
Yeah, no, beautiful. So I have two more questions for you. One is something practical. What's the number one tool from your teachings that you use on a regular basis that helps, you know, improve your everyday life? Is there one thing that stands out that is a very effective tool that you could share with people?
Yeah, you know, the cornerstone tool, if you will, is what we call the quiet mind, what some people would call like meditative mindset or mindfulness, but it's a very particular technique, which is the quiet mind. And it's essentially like getting out of your thought patterns, you know, stepping away from the chatterbox mind and coming to that place of kind of interconnectedness and peace, which is a very peaceful, a very quiet place. But it without that, you can't access the other communication that's available. You know, the intuition and the silent kind of pulls in different directions that we're getting all the time, but because our minds are so dominant, we don't necessarily hear it or we don't listen to it. So if I can recommend anybody, quiet mind meditation as a way to go.
So is that it? Is there a process to the quiet mind meditation? Is there like a technique that people can try?
Yeah. So there's, you know, we come, like we combine this with nature, you know, because nature really supports all of what I'm saying, and it supports people to be in that place of peace and quietness. So if you're able to, once a day, go out to nature, and that doesn't have to be off into the woods. That can be your front porch, your back porch. It could be, you know, a little patio area. It could be your deck of an apartment or a flat, and just sit and be in that space and relax into that space. Soften your gaze, you know, like don't focus on any detail. Just kind of use your peripheral, what we call wide angle vision. You take some deep breaths, some good belly breaths. You know, don't breathe up in your chest, breathe down into your abdomen and fill up that belly, you know, and do that a few times, and just soften that gaze and be in that space and feel your body. You know, really allow yourself time to feel your body. You might suddenly feel aches, pains. You might feel, you know, how tired you actually are. That's okay. You want to feel that, because your body is like the communication antenna. It's the tool of communication. So we got to feel those things, but just allow that to pass through, and then allow yourself just to sink into that place and be for a little bit. And typically it's about 20 minutes. You know, that's like the standard, because it takes about that long to really get into that quiet space. If you can do 40 minutes, great. But, you know, if you can do 20 minutes, awesome. If you can only do even 5 minutes, that's okay. But try to do 20 when you can, and just see how it affects your life. If you haven't done something like that before, just see how it affects your life. You'll find communications with significant others are more peaceful. You'll find like you just feel better about life, you know, like, and that's going to start changing your behavior in really good ways. So it's very simple, you know, maybe too simple. You can overlook it, but,
Never
you
too
know, just take
simple.
some time for yourself and sit outside.
Yeah. Never too simple. I think we've become a simplified society where everyone wants the shortest, quickest way. So I agree. 5 minutes is better than no minutes. So whatever you can do, get it done. Try this little meditation that Sal shared, and see how it changes your life. Okay, so if in the
Awesome.
meantime, if people want to find you where you're planning to go already, other than Toronto, we're going to squeeze Toronto in your schedule somewhere. Where can they reach you? Where can they find your website? How's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so the website is helpersmentoringsociety.net. So just www.helpersmentoringsociety.net. That's going to kind of give you the picture of at least the work I do, a bit of that. It's going to give you the courses that are happening out there, the gatherings that are available, kind of on the public front of things. If you want to get a hold of me too, if anybody feels called, then the easiest, I have lots of emails, but the easiest one is amonghelpers@gmail.com. You know, that
Awesome.
one gets to me pretty quick. That's kind of my personal. So I'll share that to whoever's listening here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sal. And you know what? I think I'm going to have to plan to come out and visit you in South Dakota, and maybe do a quest. We'll talk about that over email when
Awesome.
would be a good time. So yeah, more than anything, thank you so much for all that you're doing right now, all the light and teaching that you bring into this world. It's much needed. So really, really thank you, from brother to brother, a mentor, and just thank you for being such a great teacher and leader. So keep doing what you're doing, and I hope this talk reaches who it needs to, and if it just touches one or two people that reach out and follow that path, and we did our work here today. So thank you, and
Yeah.
I hope to see you soon, brother.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me here again, Gio, and for everything you're doing.
Awesome.
Hopefully,